Arsene Wenger was the manager of Arsenal for 22 years, making him the club's longest-serving manager. He won 3 Premier League titles and 7 FA Cups, also culminating in a defeated league season in 2004, a feat not accomplished by anyone for 115 years. Wenger worked closely with David Dein, who was vice chairman at Arsenal, and this led to a long period of success at the club. However, in his latter years at Arsenal, Wenger faced criticism for the club's lack of success in major competitions. The club went 9 years without a trophy and struggled to compete for major honours. Some of this was due to the Emirates Stadium being built and the lack of funds that resulted from that. Despite all that, Wenger remained committed to Arsenal and left in 2018 after 22 years of service. Once he left though, Arsenal entered a period of stagnation. In 2017, at a conference in Brazil, Dick Law, Arsenal's chief negotiator, defended the club's traditional management model, with Arsene Wenger making all key decisions as the most successful in football. Law's comments came amid debate about whether the club should hire a sporting director. He argued that the current model had worked well for Arsenal, although, looking at the trophies that had been won in the previous years, you couldn't say this was the case, as Man City and Liverpool were starting to dominate English football, and both operated under a different model. Arsenal CEO Ivan Gazidis wanted to emulate the success of Liverpool and Manchester City by creating a structure that took control of transfers away from the manager. Raul Sanllehi was hired as the head of football relations in 2017 to oversee player transfers and contract negotiations at Arsenal. Gazidis left in 2018 and was replaced by Vinay Venkatesham as managing director. Raul Sanllehi was then promoted to head of football. Under him, he created a 4-man team, which included Edu Gaspar as technical director, Huss Fahmy as head of football operations, Per Mertesacker as head of the academy, and Mikel Arteta as the head coach, after the firing of Unai Emery. Despite the big money arrivals of players such as Nicolas Pepe, Alexander Lacazette, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, there didn't seem to be any change in the fortunes of Arsenal on the pitch, although Edu Gaspar's arrival did see the signing of young talents such as Gabriel Martinelli and William Saliba. Sanllehi described the setup at Arsenal as a cross. Within the model, there are 4 points: head coach, sporting director, football operations, and academy. It seems though Arsenal's hierarchy were not as confident in the man at the top of their structure, as he was forced to leave on the onset of COVID. Gus Fahmy also left a few months later, and 55 scouting staff were let go too. The wider football community were laughing at the club and scoffed at the idea that they could operate without any scouts. In late 2020, Arsenal made 2 major changes that they hoped would lay the foundations for a period of success at the club. Mikel Arteta was promoted to manager, and Edu was promoted from technical director to sporting director. Edu was given a blank slate to restructure the club, which saw Per Mertesacker, who did sit at the same level as him before, fall under Edu, giving Edu control over all departments of the footballing side of the club. Soon after, James Ellis joined from Fulham as a scout, and now he's been promoted to head of recruitment. A structure had started to form, and you could see the results in the transfers that were coming in. In 2020, they had signed Willian, but since then, they started to recruit intelligently with the signings of Ben White, Odegaard, Ramsdale, Tomiyasu. There was good work being done by the new evolved scouting department, all of this in a couple of years after the wider football world had been scoffing at the club without scouts. Having the correct structure in place is really huge for a manager. If you watch my previous video on Manchester United, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now at Arsenal, Edu has created the right structure that allows Mikel Arteta to be successful. The club has a structure in place for success, a young team that is built on lower wages than the rest of the big clubs, yet last season, only Arsenal were competing with Man City for the title. A transfer strategy that is proactive and reactive. For example, there were missed deals in the January transfer window of last season for Mudryk and Caicedo, but they quickly pivoted to Trossard and Jorginho, something that the other big clubs like City and Liverpool have done very effectively. They covered the gaps, they didn't hesitate on pulling the trigger on their targets once their main targets were taken. Arsene Wenger was a legendary manager, but him leaving gave Arsenal the chance to bring the club into the future. They did have a big mishap with the convoluted structure that was put in place by Raul Sanllehi, but with Edu in charge, you can see the foundations of a team that can challenge for honours in the next few years. They're also back in the Champions League, which will help with revenues for increasing the wage bill as their young squad gets older, and for more transfers. It's not just the transfers. Edu's work seems to have also had an effect on the academy. Per Mertesacker and Steve Morrow are in charge there, but you've seen in the last few years players like Bukayo Saka, Emil Smith-Rowe and Reece Nelson have come into the Arsenal squad. When you're competing with big clubs that can spend a lot of money on transfers, even though Arsenal have just started doing that, you still need to have a bit of a production coming in from your academy too. I hope you've enjoyed this very short video on Arsenal and the changes in the structure post Wenger, but let's leave the last words to Raul Sanllehi, as he's had a lot to say about Arsenal. Here's what he said. I do not agree when clubs call first team coaches the manager. They have betrayed the model a little bit now. By going back to the manager at the top, that is a mistake. I would not have allowed that to happen. I wonder what Liverpool, City and now Arsenal think of that statement. Thanks for watching.